Welcome to Horror Melee,
a podcast born of a group of people who love to talk and debate horror.
Every episode, one of us picks a movie to review, and the rest of us must either suffer or enjoy that pick.
Turn off your brain and enjoy. Turn off your brain and enjoy.
Okay.
Yeah, I just did it once more, just so.
Turn off your brain.
Turn your fucking brain off. Turn off.
Do not enjoy this.
Turn off the podcast right now and go to bed. On this episode of Horror Melee, I'm joined by Holly.
Hello.
And Stephanie.
Hi.
The trio are back together. Sorry about last episode. Just had to take a quick break. But this episode, we are discussing the 1962 cult classic, Carnival of Souls. Dun dun dun. This is an independent horror film that was released September 26, 1962. It is directed by Herc Harvey. Yep, Herc Harvey. Written by Herc Harvey and John Clifford. Stars Candice Hilligoss, Francis Feist, Sidney Berger, and Art Illison. Give you a quick summary about the film. Mary Henry, a young woman whose life is disturbed after a car accident. The next day, she moves to Salt Lake City to play the organ for a local church. When she gets to Salt Lake, she begins to see a presence known as the Man and becomes drawn to a pavilion of an old abandoned carnival. Spooky. Yeah.
The Man.
Why I picked this movie is pretty funny, actually. I've been watching a lot of Twin Peaks lately, trying to get to that third season, just to, catch up and watch it. And David Lynch put this on one of his influence lists. This movie influenced him a lot. And then last week I spent time in Salt Lake City, which the movie was filmed in, so it was kind of just a perfect storm to pick. So that's why I went with this film. I've actually never heard of it until about 3 weeks ago. Didn't know.
Which I can't believe because this is on so many lists. I haven't seen this movie until you picked it, but it's been on my list. I saw the poor remake or kind of remake, but the original, yeah, it's definitely on so many lists.
Yeah, it's funny you say that because as soon as I found it on his influence list, it was just popping up everywhere. It's weird. This movie's either on classic horror movie list or classic art house film list. It makes both, which is really interesting to me. I'll give you just my quick initial thoughts, then we can go into what you guys think. Like I said, I did a lot of research before I actually watched this movie, and what intrigued me was David Lynch, George A. Romero, Wes Craven. They love this movie. They talk about it quite a bit. And then I read how this movie did a lot of guerrilla filmmaking techniques, which at this time period was just kind of finding its footing. Wasn't really, it was kind of harder back then with bigger cameras and stuff like that. But now 16 millimeters a big thing, and you get battery powered cameras. I mean, it was just not the norm at this time. I watched the film twice, and the second time was way more enjoyable, but I still have a lot of issues with it. The movie does a great job of creating that surreal, dark, spooky atmosphere. From the harsh score of the organ to the actors giving this very emotionless feel to every character, which could have been the actors not really being real actors, or it could have been Harvey telling them to do that. I don't know. I've tried to do research on it, but it's always flip-flop. One person says this, the other person says that. I do feel the movie was somewhat predictable, but still had a pretty good room for interpretation at the end, which I liked. And the longer I sit and kind of dwell on the movie, it grows on me, but it's still somewhat in limbo for me. What are your guys' initial thoughts?
Just like Mary.
Da, da, da. So, Stephanie, what's your initial thoughts of the movie before we get into the nitty-gritty of it?
I liked it. I don't know why it took me forever to watch it. I enjoyed watching it. It cut right to the chase, starting from the very beginning with the drag race, and you had these three badass chicks like cranking cigarettes, racing cars.
Did you find in the beginning of the movie, I don't mean to cut you off, but
yeah, it's okay.
When I started the film, I felt like I started somewhere in the middle, and I had to go check another source to make sure that was the beginning of the film.
Yeah. Funny, like, I'm sure we'll get into the production side of it, but when it started, I was like, oh, this feels like a drag race PSA they would put, like, right before the movie when you're going to go see it for the first time. And then reading about the production, I was like, oh, okay, that makes sense.
I mean, I literally, like, stopped the movie a minute in. I was like, this isn't the beginning. And I found the opening scene on YouTube, and I was like, oh, this is the beginning. So
yeah, I ended up renting it because I found a really good quality. You can watch it on YouTube, but it's really bad quality.
They have it on Amazon.
Oh.
Yeah. Director's Cut.
Prime?
Yeah.
Oh.
And I believe Shudder too.
I thought I saw it on Shudder.
I don't know if maybe a while ago, but
still on Shudder?
I watched it on Tubi.
Or like how we just watched, all three of us watched it in different ways.
Yeah.
There's 7 different cuts of this film, so I'm intrigued to see if we all watched the same cut.
Oh. Dun, dun, dun.
I hear the director's cut has like 8 more minutes or something like that.
That's the Amazon. That's the traditional cut you'll see nowadays, and that's the one that's on Amazon.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I paid for it, which I'm fine. Considering that Herc Harvey and his crew got swindled from their distributor. So any money I can give to Herc, I'll do that. I did like this movie. I liked it more than I thought I was going to like it. The first like like scene where she couldn't hear people or people couldn't hear her. That's when I was like, oh, she's dead. I get it. And it made me think of The Sixth Sense, you know? Anytime I watch old movies like this, I kind of wish I got to experience it like before where I am now, you know, having seen a ton of movies that were influenced by this that had those twist endings. And I kind of want to ask people if they, you know, were surprised by the twist at the end.
Yeah, that's interesting. Like being able to, you know, this opening up in a theater and just standing outside of it and just like, were you surprised by it? Did you see it coming at all? You know,
yeah.
Are we just too deep into film now that like we've seen so much of it that nothing surprises us?
Yeah, and even like like the makeup of the people in the carnival,
the ghouls,
you know, that the ghouls, that inspired, you know, Night of the Living Dead.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, was that spooky makeup back in the day? Like,
I think
ooh.
I think that was low budget makeup.
Yeah, but it worked.
Yeah, no.
It worked. Like everything.
Yeah.
So everything in this movie worked. I didn't think it was. You could tell that some of the actors weren't real actors. You know, it had like a homemade feel to it, but some of the actors were really good. You know, Mary I thought was really great.
Oh yeah.
Even the director who played the man, like you could tell he's just like loves scaring people, and he scares people the same way I love scaring people, where you just lurk and stare and you know, you just stare at them. Like it wasn't until the part where like he actually goes to grab her. I forget that part. But it all worked. Like I enjoyed it. I thought it was well made. I mean, it's definitely. I love the camera shots. Like I like that this is like they call this the bridge of horror and art house. You know, and these guys who made, you know, industrial films like PSAs and stuff about like how to act like a lady in public, really knew what they were doing.
Yeah. Holly, what did you think of it?
That was really long. Sorry.
No, it was great.
No, yeah. I have definitely heard of this before. I know I've seen the remake, and I did not like it.
Yeah, the remake was so dumb.
Yeah, I thought that I had seen this when I was younger, or at least seen parts of it, but I guess turns out I hadn't. So this was a first time watch, and I was like you, Steph. I enjoyed it more than I thought I was going to. Because, well, partly because I thought I had seen it before, and it's like, oh yeah, nothing stuck out at me. I don't really remember it, but um, it had a very gothic feel with all the organs, and because it's in black and white, and like all the shadows and everything fall in just the right spot and everything, and um, yeah, I like that gothic feel to it. It gives like a very old kind of Dracula and like Phantom of the Opera, like silent movie type, because it has the organ accompaniment to it rather than a big score. So you kind of think of silent movies. And yeah, I really enjoyed it. I thought it was pretty creepy. And I have when we get to it a little later, I have a good story from my childhood
Okay.
that made it extra creepy.
I will say this before we like jump into like kind of go through the scenes of the movie. Mary Henry, also Candace Hilligoss, talks to men the way Sean Connery did to women in the 1960s in this film. She just looks at him and was like, never coming back, slaps him on the ass and walks away. I'm like, oh, okay.
Funny because I don't remember what Alan and I were talking about, but I told him that Dr. No, the first James Bond movie, came out the same year that this did.
Oh, did it really?
Yeah.
That's so funny. But yeah, that's one thing I did notice. It was not your typical woman in the 1960s film.
Yes.
At all.
Mm-hmm.
At all. But let's start from the beginning of this drag race. Which just felt after the movie finished, I just felt this whole scene she should have, like, spoiler, she should have died a different way. The drag race made no sense to me.
And it looked like they were driving like 5 miles an hour on that bridge, and all of a sudden she's like,
yeah.
ah!
Yeah. I was just gonna say, I love when the woman driver's holding the steering wheel with both hands with a cigarette. She's like, I'm gonna beat him.
Yeah, I'm really gonna show him how I drive. Yeah, three chicks in a car versus 2 dudes.
Is that just common in the 1960s for a dude to roll up and be like, hey, little lady, let's go drag racing. You versus me.
Yeah, that's what they did, right? I mean, you're in small town Kansas. Like, what else are you gonna do?
Yeah, look at corn, I guess.
Come on, hey, look, you have it in Greece. And that's the
True.
epitome of what that era was.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You're right.
So the budget for this was $30,000.
Yep, roughly.
How, like, driving a car off a bridge? How did they do that?
So they made a deal with the town that owned the bridge. The town wanted new railings on the bridge, so they allowed them to film that scene and crash the car as long as they pulled the car out of the river and replaced the railings with new ones, which cost them $38. $38.
But how do they?
Awesome.
How do they actually, like, film that scene? Like, do they?
Oh, I just imagine they push the car off the bridge.
Like, someone gets in, kind of puts, like, something on the gas pedal and, like, turn the wheel and jumps out, or
yeah,
because you can see it turn off the bridge.
Yeah,
just like throw it in neutral and
have like a string to pull the wheel, because I mean they didn't have a budget, so there's no like crane pulling the car into the water or like a tow truck or anything like that. So I don't know. I imagine they just put it in neutral, gave it a little push, and then started filming. They're like, we got one take, let's do this.
I know, that's my other thing. I'm like, a car is expensive. They're like literally one take to do it, and they did it.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. And then another comment. So when the police are there, literally fishing for a car, I was like, wait, that's not how they do it. You don't get like a hook the size of my hand and try to pull like find where the car is. Like, that's what?
Yeah. No wonder they've been there for 3 years.
thought, like, I knew that. I said in the beginning of my spiel that this movie was predictable because they said, "Oh, we've been here 3 hours. We're never gonna find him." 2 or 3 times during that one scene. So I'm like, okay. So they've been there 3 hours. Then she walks out of the water like, "Oh, hey guys, what's up?" That scene that when she walked out of the water, there's a kid in the background wearing a white shirt, and he looks directly at the camera and just goes,
Yeah. I know, I love that. Like after she walks by, he like looks at the water and then looks at the camera, and he's like, "Sure, whatever. I don't.
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense to me, but I'll take it."
Yeah.
It's been a weird day.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, someone could survive underwater for 3 hours. Like, well, yeah, why not? She's alive.
So she gets out of the water and then instantly goes to, I guess they make organs in this town, and that's where she goes to and starts playing her. I guess she went to college to be an organist.
Organist?
Yo,
Yeah.
Organist?
Organs are crazy.
Yeah.
Like
Mhm.
watching that, they got knobs. You got 3 levels of keys. You got foot pedals happening.
They can't play in heels because she kept taking her shoes off to play that organ.
Yeah.
I thought it was like pretty interesting because at this point of the movie, besides there's one scene where they turn on the radio, all the other music is just organ.
Yeah.
Gave this nice eerie tone to the film, except there was one song they were playing with the organ in the beginning of the movie that annoyed the shit out of me, and I did not like the Carnival organ that they had. That was really nice, but in the beginning of the movie, where she's playing, I don't know, everyone, it's like not a good song. It's kind of creepy, and everyone's like looking up to the skies like this is the most heavenly song they've ever heard, and I'm like, my fucking ears are bleeding.
I made a note that the organ is the bagpipes of the percussion and string instruments.
Yes. It really is.
Yeah.
Like, you can use it tastefully, but making an entire soundtrack.
But that's what. I mean, that made the movie. You know, like
Yeah.
it created atmosphere. You know.
Yeah, definitely with the carnival scene and stuff like that. But just that beginning song that she's playing for the first time.
That everyone in the factory stops what they're doing and looks up and is like, "This is a great song."
Yeah, Jesus is descending from the heavens as she plays this.
To tell you to knock it off.
Yeah, turn that shit off. But I love that scene where she stops playing and she's like, "Well, I'm leaving this morning." She's like, "Oh, well, come back and see us, Mary." "I'm never coming back." I'm like, damn.
Yeah.
Right? And she's like, and they're like, "Well, are you going to stop by and see your parents?" She's like, "Nope, I'm getting the fuck out of here."
Yeah, fuck my
Yeah.
parents.
Damn, like you just survived a terrible accident and fuck everybody. I'm moving to Salt Lake.
Mary, it takes more than intellect to be a musician. Put your soul into it a little. Okay? Good luck, Mary. Stop by and see us the next time you're in.
Thank you, but I'm never coming back.
Yeah. So, it's just like her whole life. I mean, what a different time. I went to college to be an organist, and now I'm moving to Salt Lake to have a career playing in a local church. What a strange time.
So I heard a short little interview with Herc, the director, and he commented that Mary didn't live her life. So she comes back kind of as like a poltergeist energy because she wasn't ready to die. But then, the man / death catches up with her eventually.
What you just
Okay.
said kind of interferes with one of my interpretations of the end.
Okay.
I was getting a little introspective or I should say rather existential to watching.
All right.
Honestly, if someone asked
And-
me to create a definition for any of those words, I'd be like, I don't know. I would get the existential. I don't know.
So when he is billed as the organ factory boss.
I love it. I love it.
And the construction worker, when they're talking and talking about her like acting weird, and the construction worker, he said if she's got a problem, it'll go right along with her. And I really love that line because it's something that's automatically relatable to the audience, because I mean, who of us doesn't have something that's like, oh,
Yeah.
I really don't want to do that. But I noticed that it's also kind of points to her avoidant behavior, and she's not well, I mean, how do you deal with trauma? But she's not, according to the boss, she's not dealing with her trauma properly. So she just moves and she's avoiding that. And, you know, however scared and justified she is in running away from the man whenever he shows up, she doesn't confront him, even though she confronts Lyndon several times and, you know, tells him like, you know, I don't want to be here. I don't want you here. She never confronts the man. So she's always avoiding him. And then when the twist is revealed and you see that she dies at the end, if you want to make your own assumptions as to why this happened, I was thinking because she didn't want to die. And that's another part of her avoidant personality, is just like, you know, going to the bright light or the long tunnel, whatever. And it's like, nope, I'm going to turn around and go this way. And she just has that thread throughout the movie.
I had this kind of different interpretation of the end where she's in limbo / purgatory, and all these people that she's like meeting, right, are trying to tell her like, you need to become better, you know, start like saving yourself to get out of here, to be like taken to, let's say they believe in heaven and hell, to heaven, or else this man, the ghouls, are going to drag you back down to where you actually belong. Here's your one because there's a ton of times in the movies where they're like, you know, I hope she gets out of here kind of thing, and they keep talking like they like, you have all these people kind of trying to help her throughout the film, and then she just denies their help, or just turns them away over and over again. From Miss Thomas to the doctor to
creepy neighbor John Linden is when he finds out that she's a church organist and how indifferent she is that she works in a church. He's like, whoa, like, don't you feel bad about that? You know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I viewed his character as still in purgatory, kind of just another bystander in purgatory still, because he was just so fucking creepy.
Yeah, that was a little uncomfortable.
Oh man,
Yeah.
Gosh. And I mean, we're gonna jump around. I don't know if that, whatever.
Yeah.
But even when he eventually gets her to come out and takes her out for a beer after she got fired from playing like creepy, non-religious music on the organ.
Your soul.
Yeah, that escalated quickly.
Yeah. The fact that he's playing her so hard, he's just like, oh, come on. And then when she's like, no, I want to be here, he's like, okay, well, maybe I'll just like cool off, and you know, then he starts giving her the cold shoulder, because he's just like, oh yeah, no, maybe I won't, maybe you should be by yourself. And she's like, no, I don't want to be alone. I'm just like, oh god, you are just next level creep.
He
Yeah.
was scarier than the ghouls.
Yes.
Honestly.
Yes, he was so pushy too. Like,
Yeah, it just made me sad because, you know, she knows what a creep he is, and she's so desperate to not be alone that she's like, well, I guess I'd rather be with the creep than be alone.
yeah.
Yeah.
So creepy John Linden, the neighbor, has a room in the same house where Mary is renting a room. and Mary is expecting Miss Thomas, the homeowner, to come up with coffee and sandwiches as she's taking a bath. So when we see that John ends up knocking on the door, Mary's like, "Hey, come in, Miss Thomas." And instead of him being like, "Oh, it's me, John," he's like, "I'm still coming in," even though this chick is expecting someone totally like not me. I was like, "Oh."
So the reason I said he was also kind of in purgatory was because he's the only one that's not really trying to help her. And he's doing these weird things, like he's stuck down there for maybe his own sins, being, I don't know, a little too rapey and creepy. Yeah, he's just, that whole scene that he's watching her put on her robe through the door.
And the music they play, I was like, no, let's not play like the sexy disrobing music. Because
yeah. Let's make this okay. I don't know, but going to the scene where she's playing the piano, she goes into that trance. That is
okay. Organ, come on. It's give the instrument some respect.
Well, she's playing the organ. She goes into this hallucinogenic trance, right? This to me was where the movie kind of really took off. This is like, first time I watched it, I was like, oh, this is really interesting how they filmed it, where they sped up the dancing, made it really, really creepy. And then you kind of get this weird spinning David Lynch camera movement thing going on. I guess Herc Harvey camera movement going on. And, you know, you start to get this really eerie sense. And during my second watch through, I was like, oh, this is the point where the ghouls know they've won, that they are going to bring her back. Mm-hmm. They're going to take her because he just, comes reaching out with his hands.
Yes.
And then the priest slams it down and is like, get out of here, you're fired. Registering to himself, he's like, your soul is lost at this point. They're going to take you, kind of thing.
Profane, sacrilege. What are you playing in this church? Have you no respect? Do you feel no reverence? And I feel sorry for you and your lack of soul. This organ, the music of this church, these things have meaning and significance to us. I assume they did to you. But without this awareness, I'm afraid you cannot be our organist. In conscience, I must ask you to resign.
What'd you guys think?
I like that. I love that. Yeah, I wasn't thinking of like a purgatory type metaphor, but I kind of want to watch it again and just watch it like that.
Because in the beginning of the movie, I thought, oh, she's a ghost, but then through the entire movie, I'm watching, I'm like, she could be a poltergeist or a ghost that people just see, that can talk to her, and that's why she comes in and out. But at the same time, it's like, some of these people are helping her way too much. They're grabbing onto her, like a ghost. So I just jumped to the purgatory idea. It just sunk with me a lot more.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, it makes more sense because, the second time around when I was watching it, I was like, so how does it work if she's a ghost? Like, why can she talk to so many people and just, have these random interactions with people? And I was, just questioning how it works. So I like that purgatory theory much more.
I do think that she has a supernatural energy that she can interact with people, because although with people on Earth, although now I'm thinking the main people who helped her, they wanted to help her. Like the doctor who showed up and was like, I'm going to help you. Miss Thomas, who's kind of like just staying at home. kind of being like, don't worry about it, your nightmares, like don't let your illusions or your imagination get the best of you. But then, when she's in like the train or the bus depot or even the department store, she's kind of interacting with people, but that's when she falls out of touch, where she's kind of like, has the water and can't hear people.
Yeah.
They can't hear her, where she goes back into that, like her dead zone, let's say.
Yeah.
Because those people weren't really helping her with what she had to accomplish.
Right.
Yeah. Oh, that's a good way to look at it. Like, they're just nobodies to her.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And it's always when it always starts in those weird times where she's with the mechanic or the lady who's putting on her dress.
So the mechanic in the first scene when she's getting to Salt Lake, and so now I heard somewhere they were like, so this mechanic who points up, he's like, yeah, it's right over there, and then it cuts to like a dark scene. I heard someone comment that he pointed her into like the dark area, so if this was purgatory, he was like, go here to this dark zone, like the hell zone or whatever. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
That's so funny you said that, because I've watched it twice, and every time he points, I laugh so hard because I'm like, you're pointing at nothing. Nothing. You're going nowhere with this point. But now, since you just said that, I'm like, oh, yeah.
Yeah, because one thing that I thought they did really well were the cuts.
Oh, yeah.
From scenes,
I thought they did a really good job of like you said, the cuts, the audio cuts, and the whole progression of just her sanity in general, just like this downward spiral of just like, she wants to still be this like empowered person to solve everything herself and don't take help from anyone, but the deeper and deeper she goes, she starts realizing she needs help. They did a really good job on that. That ending scene though, where after she leaves the train station and hears the bird, and then
that brings her back to the earthly plane.
And then she goes to the doctor's office, and in the doctor's office you have the man.
Mm-hmm.
And so she goes to the carnival place again.
Because she's a strong-willed woman, and she's going to do it.
She's going to deal with it.
I'll just come back later then.
That whole dance number / like hide and seek game was so fun. Like, that whole dancing scene was so eerie. He's the man's dancing with her as she watches, and that freeze frame they did, it looked so good. It looks so good.
Mm-hmm.
But speaking of the ending, because we've already kind of talked quite a bit about it, it's pretty much the only main thing to the movie. Like, we could talk about, these hallucinations she had and some of the people helping her, but the movie is just this big downward spiral to show, to get to her getting taken by the ghouls and then showing that she was dead the entire time. Do you feel the movie missed anything important leading up to that, though? Like, they could have done a better job at something.
A better job at something. I don't know what that something is. I wasn't sure if her body physically was there, but her soul was lost, and she was acting kind of soulless until like she figured out that she was dead and without a soul.
Yeah.
That's one interpretation, and I was like, oh, I guess I could see that. I mean, I knew for sure she was dead, but how do you it's not like Bruce Willis in The Sixth Sense where, he's only interacting with one person, he's just a dead guy and that's it. Like, she's interacting with multiple people, and I was like, well, how do you explain that? And I think your interpretation of her, Patrick, where she is in like a purgatory situation and there are people who are trying to help her, like, get her soul up to heaven, because, she was not living a holy life, smoking cigarettes, drag racing cars. And
Smoking those jazz cigarettes.
and I think maybe she was kind of like, I don't know, like I don't want to say like a bad girl, but maybe in the time, a rebellious young independent woman. And I would hate to have a movie by two dudes who used to create PSAs about how to act properly in public, that this would be like, oh, well, this woman wasn't falling in line as they should, so this is what happens to young ladies. But maybe that, like, they could have been a little more clear about.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. Like, she's not a great person, but she's more introverted than anything. That doesn't make her a bad person, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, why is she this bad person? I know she's dead and the ghouls are going to get her, but you kind of like make this thing where she's like, oh, I don't believe in I don't care for the church. They mentioned that line 3 times.
Yeah, like they made it very obvious that she was a strong, independent woman who didn't
go to church.
Yeah, didn't go to church. And in that time, like, you weren't not religious.
Yeah.
Whatever it was, like, you didn't, and you weren't at least so open and vocal about it too. I mean, even like, I know I said this before, but even John Linden, who's like, I like to start the day off in a good mood and like put whiskey in my coffee, and I don't, he wished he could have majored in like hot chicks in school. And yet he still has like a moral ground of like, you're an organist for a church, you should be like somewhat, religious.
I still think he is like in purgatory with her. He's like the only one. I did think it was interesting that they filmed at the Saltaire in Salt Lake City, or on the Great Salt Lake, because the Great Salt Lake is so salty. It's a dead lake, right? There's nothing there, so it kind of fits with the whole tone. But
how salty is it?
I just imagine Patrick going up and like being like, like cupping his hand and like testing it out, like putting his finger in, like, how salty is it? And you're like, it's pretty salty.
It also smells terrible.
Ugh.
I was like, oh, I hope he chose this site because, it kind of symbolizes with, I don't know, purgatory, just death in general. Nothing grows there. It's just a dead place. But he only chose it because of the building, the Saltaire. That's the only... Yeah. This whole movie was made because of that one building.
Yeah, he happened to be driving by and saw it and was like, there should be a ghoul carnival here. And apparently that's all he gave John Clifford, and was like, write me a movie. So...
are you sure, Harvey? Like, this is it?
Yeah, I said that, like, after reading all the production stuff, I was like, this movie is accidentally strange.
Yes.
And,
yes.
Yeah. It just, everything just worked out and fell into place for it. Because I agree with you too when you were saying, you kind of want a little more explanation as to, like, why is she this bad person, or, how does this all work? But I'm curious as to how that would have changed the strangeness of the movie. Like, what of the imagery and like that surrealness would have been taken out if they, decided to spend more time talking about her past.
They could have removed the entire drag race scene and had her do something like somewhat bad, and it accidentally causes her death, or her and 3 friends' deaths, and it would have still kept the movie the same, right? But it would have make it look a little worse on her part.
But the thing is, like, I don't think she was a bad person, because
maybe drag racing was considered bad.
Yeah, but even like, she wasn't the one driving, and in the scene where like they're drag racing, you could tell that she's nervous, and she's like, I'm a very nervous passenger, to quote James Bond. She's uncomfortable. And even like, she keeps to herself. When John Linden offers her whiskey in her 7:15 a.m. morning coffee, she's like, that's not the breakfast of a church organist, So like, she doesn't do anything other than being, and I keep saying this, like, an independent woman who, wants to just do her own thing.
Well, she should have watched those PSAs that Harvey made.
That's
It would have got her right back on track.
yeah, that's the one thing where I'm like, I wish I could find more information or get more motivation from the writer as far as why she is in this purgatory situation and why does she end up getting consumed by the ghouls.
I'm curious to think of John Clifford, like him talking about like, is she in purgatory or is she a ghost / ghoul too, just trying to get like, you know, the dead can't walk with the living, so the ghouls are there to bring her back, and that's it. Like, is it purgatory and the ghouls are trying to take her, or is it, you know, she can't be with the living because she's dead, and the ghouls have to bring her back? I don't know why they do it in a carnival fashion, but yeah, whatever suits their boat, I guess.
Yeah, I'm sure we're just I'm sure John Clifford is like, I don't know, I thought it was creepy.
Yeah.
That's it.
No, but that's what I love about these, though, is that you can go where, you know, your imagination is going to take you. And, you know, it's very subjective, and you get to go crazy with all these different ideas of, like, what could possibly be.
And one of my favorite lines, Holly, is when she's having coffee with Creepy John. She says, the world is so different in the daylight, but in the dark, your fantasies get so out of hand.
Yes, I love that.
Yeah.
That was that whole scene between them was the only dialogue scene that actually had, like, good dialogue in it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, Patrick, did you think this was a well-written movie?
No. It was directed, edited, that was better than the writing.
Mm-hmm.
There was some good parts to the writing, but, I mean, overall, like we just said, like, it's all interpretation, which is great, but, you know, someone could show an envelope and be like, oh, what's in this envelope? And just not show anything. Like, it's interpretation. It's we're making up as we go, which is great. But I think it had to do with the director more than the writer. There's some good lines in there. Like you just said, a really good line in the beginning of the movie with the factory manager. There's some good lines, but overall, it's not well written. It's like they had an outline of shots that they wanted to do more than they had an actual film.
Yeah, and considering their background as like informational movie makers, you know, there isn't character development. It's like we're going to write it so you learn. So there's lots of like matter of fact dialogue.
But that's one thing that's kind of also been making me scratch my head, since they did come from this world of PSAs where it's all informational. They don't give us a lot of information. Right? So it's like, is that a good writing? Or did he just not try? Because they filmed this entire movie in 3 weeks. Yeah. There was no rewrites and scripts. There was no reshoots. I mean, 3 weeks. 7, that is a fast movie to shoot.
Well, they always, apparently, when they made their PSAs, they were always under budget and on time. So they definitely stuck with that. But yeah, like... Yeah.
So, I guess playing off that question, this movie did not do well when it was released. But in the 80s, it became this cult classic, right? Mm-hmm. So it's now widely respected. And it was released on Criterion Collection. So you can buy it on Blu-ray 4K. Does it deserve that this newfound fame it has? Or is it just hyped because directors are saying it influenced them? And they're like, oh, this movie influenced these great directors. This movie needs to be looked at. Let's put it on Criterion. Or is it well written, directed? Should it be in Criterion? Should it be this famous cult classic film? Because it's not scary. They call it a horror film, but it's not scary.
But horror doesn't have to be scary.
To me, I'll ask this question after you guys answer this one.
I mean, John Linden scared me, not gonna lie. If he was sleeping in the room, like, down the hall from me, I'd be really scared.
But they probably wrote him in as, like, this, like, comedy character, not expecting to scare people. Right? But, so what do you think? Does it deserve this newfound fame, or is it just hyped?
I think it does deserve some more respect, the respect that it's getting now. Not just because, like you said, other directors have named it as an influence, but I guess watching it, and yeah, this is subjective, but I was creeped out by it, and I saw things that I have noticed in other horror movies. So it's I like to have that history. Like, that's me personally. Like, I like to see, like, oh, where did this come from? Where did this come from? I mean, not everybody's going to appreciate that. Not everybody cares about that. But for the people who like that, to go back and see, like, ooh, how did this person come up with this shot? Oh, it was influenced by this movie. For the people who like to do that, I think that they're really going to appreciate the love that this has now.
I liked a lot of the shots. I liked the organ. I think because this was so influential that it should deserve to have its Criterion Collection seal. It should be definitely salvaged and saved so that you can watch a high quality version of it.
Yeah, I definitely think this deserves the newfound fame that it has. Even just on the basis of when this came out, like we mentioned that guerrilla filmmaking. I mean, they were doing things with cameras that no one was even thinking of doing because, like, this is, in the 90s and early 2000s where the Handycam started coming out and all these independent films were happening. I mean, he's doing that in 1961, 62 with a 16 millimeter and making a feature length. I mean, a lot of those 16 millimeter films didn't become feature lengths. They were just, you film something with your friend in your backyard. To make a movie out of that, that's kind of game changing. So, a guy from Kansas that is not even being looked at because it's not Los Angeles or New York, making this now highly respected film using basic 16 millimeter cameras, awesome. I mean, I think that inspired George A. Romero, David Lynch, and Wes Craven more because they're like, I can do this myself now. Yeah, these shots are cool and stuff like that, but I can make it my own. I can become independent and do it myself, which I really respect.
Yeah, and a lot of the, well, I mean, I don't know how much, but some of his budget was crowdfunded too.
$17,000.
Yeah, like in a weekend or overnight or something like that.
Yeah, he must have been like a very charismatic person because he just went to local businesses and was like, "Hey, I'm making a film. I want $500." And they're like, okay.
Yeah, or they're like, "Hey, you want to be in a movie? I can put you in a movie, and you're gonna pay me."
Dickie baby, come on. But now to the main question: is this a horror film or an art house film?
It's the bridge of horror to art house.
But if you had to lean, if you were on a car and you had to fall to one side, which side would it fall?
Which I'm still impressed by that car going off of the bridge. Would this, if you were in a VHS store that has single categories, would this art house be in a category and horror be in a category? How would it get cataloged?
I like that, we've mentioned this a few times. It's the bridge between horror and art house. And I 100% agree with that. It is a bridge between horror and art house. But looking at the time that this came out, this would be considered more in that art house realm with the type of art house films that were coming out at that time. So I would push it more towards that than I would horror film. I still think it's both horror, art house, because you can have both. Your film doesn't have to be just one category. but I do think it leans heavier on the art house side, and I think it did it on accident, not on purpose.
I would say, yeah, I think this does lean more towards art house, but was that their plan, was to make an art house flick?
I don't think so. I think they just
No.
I think they were rushed, and
Yeah,
They
they
did
were
some
on
cool
vacation.
camera tricks.
Okay, they only had limited
Yeah.
vacation.
Okay, 1960s, you're getting 3 weeks vacation. I'm in 2019, and what the fuck?
Yeah.
10 days.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I imagine that Herc was like, I'm just gonna make a creepy movie, you know?
Yeah.
Considering he was starred in it as the man and did a really good job.
Yeah.
I would tip it more toward the art house side. However, there was one scene that scared the absolute hell out of me because it brought me back to my childhood self. And you know, like when you're a kid and your imagination just goes big with terror, it brought me back to that moment and I was very impressed with it. So I have a fun story. The part where she's driving and she's looking in the passenger side window
Mm-hmm.
and then she sees the man staring out at her. That is what scared me because when I was little, maybe about like 6 years old or so, in a suburb of Chicago called Willow Springs, there was a store. It was called Hall of a Thousand Bargains, and it was
What a name.
House of a Thousand
What a name.
Corpses.
Yeah.
right?
Hall of a Thousand Bargains.
Yeah. So it used to be. It was converted from an old dance hall and adjoining tavern, and this place had literally everything. It's like the biggest garage sale of your entire life. And the woman who owned it, she would get things from like auctions, liquidation, sales, closeouts, like anything. And it was just like these tiny little narrow aisles. And, you know, I'd always come home with this old toy or a cool book or something. But where it was like kind of nestled in the trees of like a forest preserve. And I don't know, like I still, you know, because I was so little, I don't remember exactly where it is, but there was also a cemetery like along the way. So when you're driving down the road, because it's like a forest preserve, there aren't any lights or anything. It's just you get like the reflector lights that are on the road, like dividing the lanes. So it would be me, my sister, my mom. We would go with my aunt and uncle, like usually in the summer. And my sister and I would usually tell scary stories, usually about Resurrection Mary or something. And we'd be driving down this dark road in the forest preserve by cemeteries, and then my uncle would just turn off his headlights and it would go like pitch black. And I always, whenever he would do that, I would just imagine like if I turned my head, there would be something staring at me, or I would be able to see like this weird creature like running full speed along the side of the, like chasing the car or something. Yeah. So, bravo, Herc.
You know how scary it would be driving back then?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Like, no.
Your car's doing 55 and it's pitch black and hill people are coming out. And I guess let's talk about some just like a little more production or just some little more history of the film. One thing I did want to bring up was, you know how we talked about the idea being sparked from just he drove by the Saltaire?
Mm-hmm.
That place burned down twice and flooded once. It's been rebuilt 3 times. The place is definitely haunted.
Oh, it definitely has some like bad juju with it.
For sure.
I mean, how are you going to burn down twice?
Well, the second time was arson.
So the Nordic black metalists were coming into Salt Lake, and it's a concert venue now.
Oh.
Yeah, it's kind of cool. It's still an ugly, ugly building, but it's cool. It's kind of cool. All right. Any last thoughts or anything like that?
When she was driving out towards the end, and she goes to the mechanic, she has like a weird noise, and the guy's like, "Oh, it might be your transmission. Here, let's check it out." And she ends up in a dream sequence where she runs to the bus station and tries to get a bus eastbound. So general, like, just get on the eastbound bus. And then she finds a bus of the ghouls and she's like, no, and tries to get on a plane. And then she realizes and then she wakes up in her car and she backs up. I'm like, don't you have like a busted transmission? Like, is your car...
Yeah.
I was
Wait.
what? Is your car
Also,
okay?
Also, they raised her up.
Yes.
And in her dream, they raised her down.
Yeah.
So
When she backed up, I was like, whoa, you're gonna...
see,
Me too.
that's just bad writing.
Yeah.
Because your transmission's not really broken. You're just trying to get them somewhere to do, something else. That was a weird scene. That was, I mean, like, the last hallucination scene that she has, I thought the only two cool parts was when she got on the bus and then she goes meets the doctor. Also, the bird.
Oh yeah, the birds bring her back to the Earth plane.
Yeah. Why? Are birds these magical, mystical beings that somehow bring the dead back to the living?
So on ancientsymbols.com,
Nice.
Birds...
If you guys want to sponsor us, just email us at horrormelee@gmail.com.
Birds are generally considered a link between the earth and the heaven, a symbolic of transcendence and eternal life. They symbolize freedom, because they can roam the earth and soar, and their proximity to the heavens made them seem as messengers of the gods.
So, are the birds like her last-ditch effort to not be pulled all the way down into purgatory? Like, trying to keep her afloat to become that better human, or just bringing her back to Earth for some reason?
Yeah, I mean, it says... As a result, sighting different birds came to be regarded as good or bad signs, with their appearance being like indications from God.
Well, in the state of Texas, we have the mockingbird, which is fucking annoying. So
that guy's a jerk.
So yeah, my guess is that kind of then goes back to your theory of her being in purgatory and being drawn towards the hell with the ghouls, and the birds bringing her back to a path to God or heaven or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah, because the birds, I was like, there's gotta be something with them, but...
Yeah, it was pretty consistent.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, because, in movies and TV, it's very common to have birds be the symbol of, like, oh, somebody's waking up now, because, you hear the birds chirping.
Yeah. All right. I was thinking of rating it by carnies. Is that too bad?
By carny ghouls?
Carny ghouls.
Carny ghouls.
That would be a great haunted carnival name. I'm just gonna throw that out there. Yeah. So, Holly, start us off. Rate this by carny ghouls.
All right. I am going to give this 3.5 carny ghouls.
Out of 5.
Out of 5. Yes. Like I said before, I enjoyed it more than I anticipated. I loved the atmosphere, like with the organ music as the background for, 97% of the movie. And some of the shots, like the interior of the church and everything, the shadows, it just gave a very cool old gothic feel to it that I was really digging. And some of the things that she would see, her hallucinations, they were pretty creepy and just in line with the surreal things that I like to see. So I encourage anybody who hasn't seen it, definitely give it a try.
Stephanie?
I'm also going to give it 3.5 carny ghouls out of 5. Again, to echo a lot of what Holly said, I liked it more than I thought I would. It's definitely art house meets horror for sure. I'm very impressed with what they were able to do and accomplish on a small budget like that, even in the 60s. The organ alone, I loved. I super impressed by people who can play the organ and the shots that they had of the organs. That whole vibe I thought made the movie. I love the salt air building, and definitely am glad that someone made a movie with that as a backdrop, because that's definitely big and like creepy looking, and especially the first gas attendant guy saying, "Oh, the old bathhouse," and at first I was like, "Oh, like some weird shit went down there in the 50s in an old bathhouse."
Oh my god. Especially in like Mormon, Utah, Salt Lake. There's probably some weird shit.
Yeah. It's a movie from 1962, and it felt like a modern day movie that I was watching because it had such great shots and influences that people get to enjoy today.
Yeah. I'm going to pretty much give it 3 out of 5. 3.5 Carnivals. Just mainly because, it's a predictable film. You're going to know the ending within the first 25-30 minutes of the film. I mean, we all interpreted it a little differently, so we sat there thinking about it after we finished it. I mean, the filmmakers got us by that. I mean, they did a good job of making us sit there and think what happened. I mean, not everyone's going to sit there and do that. You'll have your people be like, she's fucking dead. And that's the end of that, right? But, I mean, we sat there, we thought about it, and I'd watch it again because I feel I would pick up something a little different that I didn't notice last time, and that's great. The writing still has some issues, in my opinion, but a movie they made in 3 weeks with a low budget in 1962 with some very creative camera movements and stuff like that, that's amazing. So I'm a little upset Harvey never made another film. I feel like he could have done something great.
It's really a shame to see, like that's what he did. Like, what could he have done?
Towards the end of his life, he taught film in the University of Kansas or the State of Kansas College. Yeah, he taught film. So, I mean, he did keep doing stuff with film, and, I hope some good kids came from that, or some good creative people. But, I mean, just how they filmed it and how creative they got on some things alone gives the movie a watch. So go check it out, guys. If you haven't seen it, go watch it. Tell us what you think.
Yeah, you can see it on YouTube, or if you want to pay for really high quality, you can do that as well. Or apparently see it on Shudder,
on Amazon,
and Amazon
for free. But that concludes our episode of Carnival of Souls. Ooh. Oh, I am upset the Mormon Tabernacle Choir never joined in on that film, because they could add some spookiness to it. Tabernacle. No.
I know it is Tabernacle, but I like Tabernacle.
yeah, Tabernacles.
Yeah, that Mormon Tabernacle Choir over there,
Yeah. Do you think John Linden was there because he's like, I can have multiple wives in this state?
I mean, that's the only way he was going to finish university, is if he could major in music, so.
Yes. Yeah.
But thank you for listening and hopefully subscribing. Please check us out on horrormelee.com. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, iTunes, Twitter. Yeah, follow us on all the socials and things. Thanks for watching or listening.